And hello, it's noon, and that means it is time for our Lunch and Learn every Friday that we have. So I welcome you. Thank you. It's such an honor for you to take time out of your day and spend it with me as I try to bring some sense into the nonsense that we are bombarded with every day on our social media, news, and all that kind of stuff. So you may or may not know that in the past 6 to 9 months, we've had quite a few medications who have been recalled, and specifically heart medications. And this week, we had multiple heart medications recalled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Different strengths of losartan. So if you are a patient who takes losartan, then you need to be aware of this because your medications have been recalled because they have a known carcinogen in them. So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to give you some research on this so that you can look at what you need to do. And just as it would happen, I was at a meeting last night and I was able to speak to a pharmacist about this very thing. So I've got some behind the scenes information for you as well. And so I appreciate you logging on with me. Elle, I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much. It's really important that we get the word out and that we have people doing what they need to do, because we're going to ask you to do some grassroots activism today. So I'm not really one that likes to be a protester, but I think that sometimes we need to protest. And fortunately, I am 62 years old and I do not take any medications. So, you know, by the grace of God, I don't. And probably because I do a lot of supplements and that kind of thing. Everything is good. My blood work is good. I just had it done last week, a couple of weeks ago, and everything is good. And so I don't need to take any medications. I don't have any known diseases and that kind of thing. But if I did, and if you do, this is some real information that you're going to want to know. So this is some scientific evidence from a book. The book is called China RX, you know, the capital R, little x for prescription. China RX, exposing the risks of America's dependence on China for medicine. Now, I did not know that a lot of our medicine came from China. I had absolutely no idea. And you might not know either. I know back in the day before I got into holistic health, I still was very, very healthy, but I would do birth control. I'm just going to say, you know, I did. And I had a prescription, and my insurance company would only pay for XYZ, you know. And so that's what determined what prescription I received. And that's probably your case too. There is a difference between name brand prescriptions and generic prescriptions. And you might say, oh, well, it's just the off-brand. Well, yes and no. Okay, so your prescription medication, your brand name medication, and I'm not that well versed in it to be even able to tell you, but I'm just going to say if it's a brand name, it has specific ingredients and a specific recipe. Now, the Food and Drug Administration, the Patent Office, whatever it is, has a lockdown on that for X amount of years. I think it's 10 years, but I could not be true on that. After that period of time is up, then they no longer have exclusivity to that particular drug, and other companies can come in and make knockoff versions of those drugs. And that's what we call a generic drug. Now, a generic drug will have the same constituents in the brand name, but it will not necessarily have the recipe. So I'm just going to tell you, I do a lot of essential oil therapy here. I will make up a custom blend for you, and I will write myself a note. I did 2 drops of this, 3 drops of that, whatever. I'll stick it in your folder. That's my recipe. Somebody else could take those same ingredients, do it a totally different way, and they're going to come up with a totally different recipe even though they have the same ingredients. So does that make sense to you? My particular brand of essential oil is one that I know has the right vibrational frequencies and it's going to do what I want it to do. But if somebody else would go down to one of the big box stores and buy a same name of essential oil, but not necessarily have the organic constituents in it. It may be a synthetic or what have you. They could think that they were making the same thing. They could even have my recipe and they could think they were making the same thing, but because of the vibrational frequencies, it's not going to act the same way. So hopefully you kind of get that idea. So when a prescription comes off of patent, then these people, these other drug companies make the generic version. Now the generic version is going to look differently and it is going to react differently. My husband takes a very small amount of blood pressure medication, and when they change him from the brand name to the generic version, because insurance did not want to pay for the brand name, the generic version did not work. So this is why you have that, because you may have the same constituents, but you don't have the same recipe, and so that's kind of what that's all about. So we're going to look at this book, and we're going to explain some things about what happens to your prescriptions, especially if you are getting generic. Now, I will just tell you, 90% of generic prescriptions are made in China, or they are made with constituents found in China, okay? So they're very, very cheap, and the drug companies want to keep our medications cheap, and I'm all for, let's make the budget work. I'm all for that. But this is the thing. You get what you pay for, and if you are buying cheap ingredients, you're not going to get what you need. I mean, ask any housewife. You buy cheap laundry detergent, it's not going to clean like the brand name does. You buy cheap ingredients for your food, and it's not going to taste the same as your organic, wild caught, all that kind of stuff. It's just not going to be the same. It'll be similar, it'll look alike, but it's not going to do the job. So I'm going to go into some of this research for you so that you can get a handle on this. This book was released last year, so this is new. So the quote, and this is a quote, "Without firing a missile or hacking the electric grid, China can take America down by disrupting access to essential drugs." Okay, this book is a fine piece of investigative journalism. Now, I like that. They have to find the sources. They have to look at facts, not just opinion. It educates the reader about China's grip on our medications. China is the largest global supplier of active ingredients and chemical building blocks needed to make many of the vitamins, prescriptions, and over-the-counter drugs. Now, this includes your antibiotics, your steroids, and your cancer drugs. So all of us have had antibiotics from time to time. I know very many people that have chronic inflammatory conditions, and so they use steroids, which we don't necessarily agree with. Now, if you go into anaphylaxis, yes, I want you to have a steroid because that's going to preserve your life. But long-term use of steroid medications actually lead to bone loss and osteoporosis. I don't know if you guys knew that, but I've been doing a lot of research on bones lately, and so I've been finding out a lot of things. So until the mid-1990s, the United States, Europe, and Japan manufactured 90% of the global supply of key ingredients for the world's medications. Now, more than half of the 4,000 active ingredients used to make pharmaceuticals depends on China, okay? Our weaknesses for bargains has created a monster, all right? Like the big box stores stocked with made-in-China items, China's winning formula is for a company with the help of the government to undercut the price of drugs or the drug components. The artificially low price forces other companies out of the market. Then the company is free to manipulate the price and supply at will. So I'm just, this is just crazy. So we used to go to a specific pharmacy right down the street from the house, and Steve would get his prescription. Sometimes his prescription was $40, sometimes it was $80, sometimes it was just crazy. And so he said, the prescription didn't change. Why am I getting these different drug prices? Of course, we did not have insurance at the time, and he was not Medicare eligible, so this is a few years ago. And we found that I could get, and you can get, if you have to have prescriptions, you can log on to a website called GoodRx, all one word, goodrx.com. And they will actually give you a coupon for your medication, and they will show you in your area, you put your zip code in, they will show you in your area who has the least expensive product. Now, if you are looking at a product that is $40 or $80, depending on the month, do you know that the GoodRx price is $11? $11. So we did check with the pharmacist, and it did not come from China, so we were really excited about that. So what that is that is a large company who is able to negotiate prices based on volume. So if you have to take medications, you might want to look at that if you don't have insurance. I was talking to a pharmacist last night, as I said at the beginning, and I had just done a presentation on holistic health, and she was asking me some different questions, and she said, and by the way, I'm a pharmacist, and I said, oh, okay. I said, well, do you have any kind of crisis of conscience? And she said, as a matter of fact, I do. She said, the prescriptions that we get are so addictive. And she said, I cringe every time I have to fill them. And I asked her about this China link, and she said yes, that she was aware of it. I said, well, can't you do something so that your pharmacy only buys, from reputable countries, America or Canada or the UK or something like that? And she said, it is the corporations that decide what vendors we're going to use, and they always pick the least expensive vendors. So just know when you're getting your prescription, especially if you're getting generic, you're getting the absolute cheapest ingredients that you can have, which, your health is pretty important, and so you really don't want to skimp on your medications if you have to have them, okay? The authors warn, cheaper drugs require a cheaper way to make them. A light was shined on China's poor manufacturing prices of ingestibles in 2007 with a well-publicized dog and cat food recall. So you remember that there were different names, and these were actually brand names that manufactured their pet products in China, and they had to recall them because the animals were dying, okay? More than 4,000 pets died from renal failure due to the contamination of melamine, which is an industrial chemical used in plastic manufacture. So if you've ever been young and poor, okay, and we all have been that way at one time, you've had melamine dishes, right? If you remember the old sitcom Alf, he had a lot of melamine in that program. So melamine is a good, cheap plastic dinnerware, but it is not something that you need to have in your drugs, okay? The outrage over this economically motivated contamination of pet food dissipated, while in the next year a far less publicized drug contamination took human lives. Although manufactured by an American company, Baxter Healthcare Corporation, heparin was made in China under substandard conditions and was sold to unwitting hospitals with tragic consequences. Now, heparin is a drug that they will give women when they have breast cancer, I think that's what it is, if memory serves right. If I have it wrong, I'm sure somebody will post, and you'll get the right information, but I think that is one of those drugs. 1/3 of the batches of heparin from China was contaminated. Okay, it tells what happened, how it happened, and what the government has done to protect us in the future. So we need to know these things, okay, from the start. The authors received robotic, scripted, and unhelpful replies to straightforward questions, such as, where is this drug made? Searching for the answers, the authors delved into the loopholes in the treaties and the Food and Drug Administration regulations that have allowed shoddy manufactured drugs for human consumption to be used in the U.S. Moreover, politics was interjected. You know what? That really just surprises me. I cannot believe that happened. Politics were interjected in this. Okay, the Transparency of Drug Liability Act was introduced in 2008. It would have forced drug labels to disclose where the drug was produced, not merely the location of the parent company. The law went nowhere, and it appears that the power of the drug company lobbyists prevailed over safety. Did this signal to China that the U.S. could be influenced by special interests? We know that as lobbying, okay, to pass over the safety regulations. So this is the thing. This was in 2008. Now, the pharmacist that I talked to, she said that on her paperwork, she's got where the drug is manufactured and she has where the drug is sold. So if it's manufactured in China but comes in through a U.S. corporation and then it comes to us at the pharmacy, she has all that information. And she said customers will ask, where is this drug from? She said, I am prohibited by my corporation from giving out that information. She said, I have it, but I am not allowed to give that to the consumer. So this is what we all need to do as consumers, is we need to write to our representatives. We need to write to our congressmen, and we need to demand that, number one, they quit importing medications from countries that are not, clean, so that we get good components. And then we also need to have truth in labeling laws so we know where we are getting these drugs. Now, a few months ago, we did have a recall, as I told you, with my husband's heart medication. And he went to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist said, your particular drug is not from that part of the world. It is not from that supplier, so you are safe. Well, that's a good thing, but I'm not happy about it because, we don't know where these drugs are coming from, and it's very difficult to get that information when we need to. So your number one resource, your number one treasure is your health. And so if you're not able to protect your health with your prescriptions, which is why you're taking a prescription after all, you're taking a prescription because you've gone to the doctor says you've got XYZ disease and you need this medication in order to halt the disease progression or to halt the symptoms or whatever they give it to you, because we know nothing is really cured these days by medications. Everything is just managed. You want to be managed by something that is not going to further hurt your body. Now, this brings the question, are we having side effects to our primary medications because we are using medications that are not clean and are not environmentally sound? So these are the questions that you need to ask yourself. And if you, unfortunately, are someone that takes a good deal of medication, then I want you to really ask your pharmacist and find out where these medications are coming from. Because if they're coming from unclean countries, if they're coming from countries who have duplicitous manufacturing processes, then you're going to be getting elements in your prescriptions that are not what you want, okay? So I don't know if we can resurrect the Transparency in Drug Labeling Act. I don't know if that's something that's still just lying around somewhere in the Capitol, just waiting for somebody to resurrect it, or if we need to have like some kind of a grassroots protest, but I definitely believe that's something that we need to. So China's last 5-year plan for national and social development, right? They have a 5-year plan, includes entering and cornering the market on medical devices, okay? So a medical device is anything that helps you manage your health. So that could be a glucometer for diabetes. That could be any kind of thing that you use for relaxation, massaging, TENS units, anything like that. They're trying to corner the market on that. The centralization of global supply in China leaves the world vulnerable. Not only can they disrupt the supply chain and cause shortages, but they can purposefully create shortages and or adulterate drugs. Keep this in mind, that the active ingredient of Cipro, right? So Cipro is an antibiotic. It is primarily used to treat anthrax, but it will also work on MRSA and things like that. It is made in China. And so it's not my favorite antibiotic. I'm just going to be straight up with you. It is a fluoroquinoline. Fluoroquinoline antibiotics will cause irreparable muscle damage. So don't want you to have that. So whenever you go to the doctor, you go to the urgent care, you need to have your antibiotics, and sometimes you need to. I mean, people were out and about in the floodwaters last week. They got cut, they got hurt. They needed to go to the ER and get an antibiotic, okay? But you want to make sure that you're not doing any fluoroquinolines unless you just have to because of the irreparable muscle damage. Remember, your heart is a muscle, okay? Your heart that you need to live is a muscle, and we do not want that damaged. Alrighty, that is one report from this China RX book. So I want to give you a few other little snippets from this book. And these are like real world testimonies here. So in a recent article in the Epoch Times. Now, I don't know if you guys get the Epoch Times, EPOCH. I love this newspaper. It comes out once a week, and it is very unbiased. It gives you both sides of the story, and it gives you information I have not heard on any of the channels, whether it is your local, it is your cable, whatever side of the political aisle you watch. And I watch both, so it gives me things I haven't heard on either side of the aisle. So it's very, very good if you want unbiased information. So in a recent article in the Epoch Times, it confirms that Americans are becoming more and more reliant on medications manufactured in China. And many researchers feel that this poses a security threat, okay? The Food and Drug Administration is inspecting only a small number of Chinese companies that manufacture U.S. drugs. And those it does inspect are often found to have serious health violation. Meanwhile, the drugs are making their way to the United States from China either as a finished product or as ingredients, and they are often falling far below the U.S. safety standards, and some of the drugs are not being inspected, not even a little bit at all, okay? So that's pretty sobering if you're taking a medication and you're getting that medication from China and it's coming in and it's not being inspected. You could be eating dog food for all you know, right? There's no way to know what's in it, and we don't know because we're not pharmacists. We've got to trust the pharmacists, we've got to trust the doctors, and so really we need to make sure that we do what we can do with our representatives. Make sure you call your representative, make sure you call your senators and tell them it is not okay with you that we have drugs made outside of our borders and they're coming in with contaminants, okay? It is very hard to find out how many U.S. drugs come from China, since the drug companies don't make their sources apparent. In addition, even if the drugs themselves aren't manufactured in China, they write, quote, China is the largest global supplier of the active ingredients and chemical building blocks needed to make prescription drugs, over-the-counter products, and vitamins. So I just have to tell you this. I was doing some research on this week, and something pulled up. It's an Amazon product. You can get it on Amazon. I didn't really pay that much attention, but its active ingredient was nothing. There was no active ingredient, and yet it had 5 stars on Amazon. I'm not really sure what it was supposed to do, but there was absolutely no active ingredient. Okay, so I thought that was kind of funny. Do we look at the active ingredients? I do, because I want to know what's in there. I look at the ingredients on my herbs, my supplements, all the things that we do here at the clinic. I look at all of my ingredients because I want to make sure that we don't have any fillers and that kind of thing. So ingredients are important, and we definitely want to have active ingredients. It is the active ingredients that help us to get healthy. So here is like a testimonial from somebody that was in the book. This is horrible. We have a problem in the United States. It is the infiltration of Chinese generics. I had no idea that this generic was being supplied by a Chinese maker. In fact, the bottles I got said SOLCO, which is based in New Jersey. Now, I am painfully aware that Solco Healthcare US, which is based in New Jersey, is owned by the Zhejiang, I can't say all these Chinese words, which is based in China's Zhejiang province. So this is a Chinese company subsidiary distributing this drug in the United States. China has a long history of selling tainted products in the United States. Chinese drywall, lead-based paints on toys and tainted pet food. Now it is important to understand that 90% of prescriptions filled in the U.S. are generic. The insurance companies will not pay for a brand name when the generic is available. My Valsartan was about $30 for 90 days. Diovan, which is the brand name, was $750, right? So as a consumer, I understand the pinch in the pocket, right? I would rather take a drug, $30 for 90 days, than take a drug that is $750 for 90 days. But what you have to understand is that the brand name is probably made here in the United States, and it does not have any contaminants, because we do have the Food and Drug Administration and we do have safety standards. It says, when the companies cut corners and people are endangered, something is wrong. I will never, ever take another generic drug without first finding out where the product comes from. I know this is not perfect, but it is something. I think the U.S. lawmakers need to do something to make this information more transparent. It baffles me as to how the drugs could have been tainted with highly toxic chemicals for so many years. They now say the last 4 years. This chemical is known to cause liver damage and cancer. Apparently, the manufacturer changed the way it made the active ingredient, which created this poisoned byproduct. Now, who do we hold accountable? How do we get to the bottom of what went wrong? How to prevent this going forward? We have no way to compel anything in China. All that said, thanks for your information. It is very helpful. I worry that the losartan is made by the same company. I will surely investigate. Okay. What can you do? When you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a medication, go to the pharmacy, ask the pharmacy where the medication is made. The pharmacy may not be able to tell you that, but you can ask the pharmacist if the medication is made in China, and the pharmacist can tell you yes or no. And the reason I say that is because that's what we did. We asked, and they said yes or no. If the generic brand is made in China, I want you to go back to your doctor and say, I need a different medication. This medication is made in China. I have read the China RX book. Maybe you didn't read it, but you want to read it. Or I watched a video on the China RX book, which you definitely are. And I understand that these generic drugs are not safe because they are made with very, very poor standards. Go back to your doctor, get him to give you a different prescription. They have tons of prescriptions, okay? So they can give you a different one. But if you are not aware, if you don't understand, then you're going to take whatever they give you, and you could be hurting your health in a long-term way. Now, the blood pressure medications that are on recall now is losartan, all right? It is from Torrent Pharmaceuticals, okay? They are the ones that are recalling these drugs. It would be good to do a Google search on Torrent, Torrent Pharmaceuticals. Find out where they regularly source their drugs, because if they are wanting to, you know, just be profit-based, which we've got a clinic, we have overhead, we have expenses. I totally understand that you need to make money. I get that. But we don't want to give you tainted products that you need in order to stay healthy at a price that is far below what is a normal price, just in order to give you something. You see what I'm saying? If they compromise the manufacturer, if they compromise the ingredient, you're going to be spending that copay or whatever, and you're not going to be getting anything that's going to help you. And in fact, you may be getting something that's going to harm your health. So I know it's a little bit confusing. I hope it wasn't confusing. I hope that you are a little bit better armed. And again, the book is called, let me go back to that page, the China RX, right? And it looks like the cover on the book looks like a capsule, and it says China RX on it. So it'll be really easy to find when you go into your bookstore. I'll show you. There you go. It kind of looks like that. That's what it looks like. So you can go and you can find that. You can probably do a Google search on it, read reviews. There are tons of other reviews and other information that I have just shared with you. On that same note, you've been seeing our blogs about CBD oil and that kind of thing. And this was something that's been on the news this week. And so you need to understand that a lot of companies are hopping on this bandwagon of CBD. Now, CBD is good. CBD is very, very powerful, very helpful. We definitely do CBD. I do CBD every day. We have 2 brands here. One you can buy off the website, one you have to come in and get. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of the companies that are selling CBD oil are mass purchasing CBD oil, and a lot of it is coming from China. Now, CBD, or the hemp plant, is a plant that is has a lot of leaves, a lot of surface area. You know that plants exchange oxygen for carbon dioxide. You know that they do that. And so they are absorbing whatever is in the air in the places where it is grown. We want you to have your CBD from a very clean, medical grade field that is organic. And we want to make sure that you don't get caught up in all of these other companies out there that are buying CBD that is not from a good company. So this is another thing that we just have to watch out. Where are we getting it? Make sure that we're getting what is very effective and plentiful. So I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for joining me. Go ahead and share the video. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're interested in. Have a great weekend. They tell me it's fall here in the North Houston area. It doesn't necessarily feel like fall, but I'm going to take their word for it. Enjoy your weekend, and don't overdo on the pumpkin spice. Take care.